Welcome back. All right, power rankings time. It is week number 7. Jersey I'm wearing is number 10. Before anybody asks, it's a jersey I got from Michael Bublé like 5 years ago. I thought, yeah, Minnesota, I'll wear that, which means Minnesota had a pretty good week. So, news videos. If I'm wearing your team's video, it's probably bad news. In a review, means they won, and for power rankings, it means they're a pretty big mover that week, and it's in the positive. So, that being said, we'll start at number 32. Same spot as last week is Nashville. Nashville's scoring's really dried up. Reportedly, they're open for business in terms of trades. We'll see if anything happens between now and Christmas. But either way, Nashville finds themselves at the bottom of the board for the second straight week. So, they're also at the bottom of the standings currently. I actually have a good eye on the standings at this point. The standings board right in front of me, so that's good. It's a happy accident, too. I didn't intend to do it that way. Number 31. Dropping one spot from last week, although they didn't have a bad week. Calgary. So the Flames passed Nashville in the standings tonight. They played pretty well against Dallas. They get that win in the shootout. If Calgary keeps this up, they move up next week. The reality is, they got passed by a team that switched spots with them, and that's Buffalo. So Buffalo moves up one spot. And this is what I've been talking about, where this year feels different. This year feels different because Buffalo's not out of the hunt for a playoff spot. They're currently 5 points out. 5 points out is tough to make up the difference, but considering they're at the bottom of the East, that's not a huge separation. Whereas Calgary, they find themselves 8 points back. The Nashville Predators are currently 9 points back of a playoff spot in the West. And it's a 25 point nest. It's 25 points to make it into the playoffs in each conference. So, same amount of points in each conference. Buffalo finds themselves just a little bit closer. And that 9-3 win over Chicago, that was ridiculous. Number 29, dropping one spot from last week, Vancouver. I think the effort's there. I do. Players are doing their best, and I have no problem with that. They just do not have that depth down the middle that other teams have, and it hurts them in games. I don't know how they're going to fix that. I don't think they can, to be honest, this season. I think if they're going to fix it, it'll have to be next summer. And thinking about next year's free agent class and how it's thinned out already, they may have to go the trade route, which I know they tried to do this summer and it didn't work out. Maybe the market will be better next summer, or maybe Coots will be ready to go next year as well. Number 28. Dropping 6 spots from last week. If I had told anybody Toronto would be in the bottom row, there would have been Toronto fans that would have been like, well, he doesn't like Toronto, which is incorrect. And at this point, Toronto below NHL 500 this far into the season. I don't know the last time that happened, but I'm going to guess it was 2015, 2016 when the team was intentionally in the tank to try to get Matthews. Wouldn't it be funny, though, if they had like a really rough season and they ended up drafting McKenna? They win a draft lottery and they get McKenna to play with Matthews? I mean, for Toronto fans, that might be worth the pain, right? So we'll see. Or at the very least, they got a good draft position, right? So Toronto, this is why they're not trading futures. This is why when the word was out of they're not trading futures, I thought, well, of course they're not. Number 27, moving up 2 spots from last week. The Blues. The Blues have only had 1 regulation loss in their last 7. Conversely, they've won 3 of their last 7. So I don't generally move a team up if they lose in overtime or a shootout. I generally don't. There are extenuating circumstances where it can happen, but generally I don't. So this is one of those things where they're getting points, but they're not getting a lot of wins, so they're not moving up the board that much. Not losing in regulation other than once in the last 7 games. Sure, that's impressive in that it's just the 1 regulation loss, but they've definitely had their struggles as well. That being said, they did pass a couple of teams this week, didn't they? Number 26, dropping 2 spots from last week, the Rangers. Road Warriors, it seems like that might be coming to an end for them. That's the thing. I was wondering, like, okay, are their road habits going to start kicking in at home and we're going to see their home record get better? Or are their home struggles going to start eating into their road play and they're going to start struggling on the road? Definitely seems like they've started struggling on the road. That game against Utah tonight, a month ago they win that game. Tonight they didn't. So the New York Rangers are definitely a team that find themselves in trouble. They're below NHL 500 as well. So there's 3 teams below that mark The Rangers, Toronto, and Buffalo. Those three in the East anyways. In the West, there's 4. All of them are on the board too. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, all of the teams that are below NHL 500 are on the board. So there you go. Moving on to number 25, dropping 5 spots from last week. They got the win tonight, but Edmonton had a rough week in general. We'll see if that win tonight against Florida is going to be indicative of things turning around or not. It's easy to get up for a game against the Florida Panthers if you're the Edmonton Oilers. They don't like Florida at all. The tricky part's going to be to take the emotion from tonight's game and have that carry over into the next one. So maybe this is as low as Edmonton gets all season. But noteworthy here is the fact that 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Canadian teams in the National Hockey League are in the bottom row. There's only 7 Canadian teams in the NHL. So tough time for the Canadian teams at this point in time. Number 24, moving up 1 spot from last week, San Jose. Sharks are definitely showing their resilience to this point. Celebrini is, I think, dragging them to a decent record at this stage as well. They lost tonight against Ottawa. I didn't punish them for it, though. I thought they played pretty well. It was a pretty evenly played game. And so San Jose moves up 1 spot for the entire week. It would have been more than that if they'd won that game tonight against Ottawa, but the win eluded them. Number 23, moving up 3 spots from last week, Columbus. Columbus has been very back and forth on this board. They win enough games to move up 1 week, and then they'll lose enough to move down the next week. Columbus at this point, not in the playoffs, but they're tied for that last playoff spot. They've just played 2 more games and lost them both in regulation, comparatively speaking, with Philadelphia. So they're right there. The Columbus Blue Jackets are going to be interesting to keep an eye on. Werenski definitely seems to be showing that last year's run, where he ended up being a finalist for the Norris, not a one-off. He's ready to do it again. Number 22, dropping 5 spots from last week. Utah won tonight. They absolutely did. Now we'll see what they do in the following games. They have a rematch against Vegas. Vegas, of course, took them out 4-1 in their last matchup, so we'll see how the next one goes. But for Utah, they find themselves above the playoff line, but tied with Edmonton in terms of points. They just have 2 games in hand on the Edmonton Oilers at this point in time. So Utah drops because they'd only won 2 out of 10 coming into this one tonight against the Rangers. We'll see if tonight's game against the Rangers is the start of a turnaround for the Utah Mammoth. Number 21, Chicago, dropping 5 spots. It's interesting with Chicago. It feels like they were a pretty confident team that was doing well, and then the Bedard misconduct penalty happened, and it's a 2-minute misconduct for unsportsmanlike. They allowed a power play goal there. They lose that game, and then they go into Buffalo and woof, just awful game against Buffalo. So they drop down to 21st. They are currently outside of the playoffs in the West, although it is worthy of saying they're 1 point back of Utah, who have that second wildcard spot, and they have a game in hand. So, yeah, nobody's really that far out other than the below 500 teams, and even in that case, they find themselves in the East within at least 4 or 5 points of a playoff spot. Number 20, and moving up 3 spots from last week, Philadelphia. The Flyers find themselves above the playoff line yet again. The Flyers are they're creative in how they get their points. They're a fun team to watch tonight, unless you're a New Jersey fan. I think the offense is there. I think they could score goals a little more often. We'll see whether or not Rick Tockett's systems allow for that. It was nice to see Michkov get a goal tonight, unless you're a New Jersey fan. So maybe there's a sign here that the Philadelphia Flyers are ready to start lighting things up and moving their way up in the rankings, because they're only 1 point out of third. They're only 2 points out of second in the division. It's right there. With New Jersey currently having struggles, it's there for the taking if Philadelphia can stay on a hot streak here. Moving on to number 19, moving up 8 spots from last week. The biggest mover on the board's Minnesota. The Minnesota Wild, well and truly out of that bottom row. They find themselves third in the Central Division. They've won 11 out of 22 games, but they got 26 points in 22 games. And Wallstead helped them when they weren't playing well. The last couple of games, they've started to show signs of that confidence. Kaprizov's getting things going again. Zuccarello's back up to speed. Yeah, things in Minnesota are looking a lot more positive now than they were a couple of weeks ago. And it's just a matter of that consistency game in and game out. But as long as Gustafsson and Wallstead keep giving them goaltending like they have recently, Minnesota could be very dangerous going forward. Number 18, moving up one spot from last week, Detroit. The Detroit Red Wings just moving up the one spot. And what's interesting is they're first in the Atlantic Division. So this is where it's a mess, right? Like, figuring out power rankings at this point in time, it does give me a headache. There are nights I look at the board and I go over the results and I go, I think everybody's in the right spot. And that started happening over the last week. Detroit does move up the one spot. They're first in the division, but second and third place are 1 point back, and they've got a game in hand, and that's Tampa and Ottawa. And then you've got Montreal 2 points back. Montreal has a game in hand as well. So Detroit's placement could easily be outside the playoffs next week, or maybe they're still first. It's enough to give me conniptions, really. Number 17, moving up 4 spots from last week, Ottawa. Yes, the Ottawa Senators move up this week. So 21st no longer. Ottawa had a good week, and as such, they move up to 17th on the board. We'll see if they find themselves in the top half next week. They are number 3 right now in the Atlantic, but as I described, everybody's very tightly packed together. So the difference on this board this year is not what it was last year. Last year, normally all of the teams in the bottom row, at this point, we were talking about, they might be out of it. They're almost out of it, even though it was still early in the season. This year feels very different. And I also think that the American Thanksgiving rule this year is probably going to be more inaccurate than other years, where normally if you're above the playoff line, and it's this coming Thursday, that's that Thanksgiving, usually if you're above that playoff line, then you make it. And if you're below that playoff line, you don't. All the teams are so tightly packed together now, I think this year it's going to be different. Number 16, moving up 2 spots from last week, Washington Capitals. Capitals are back in the top half. They lost today, but Washington's been playing better. A little bit of bad luck, too, against Tampa today and everything. And, of course, they allowed the 4 goals in the first period before they got things together. Logan Thompson had a rough start, just the 2 saves on 6 shots. But Washington, in general, has been better since the panic index. So we'll see. We'll see if they can keep that going. Number 15, same spot as last week, is Florida. Winning enough to stay in the hunt. Yep, they find themselves, 2 points back? Yeah, they're 2 points out of the playoffs. They've been consistently 1 to 2 points out of the playoffs for weeks now. But I still think Florida's playing well, and I still think Florida, when it's all said and done, will be above that playoff line. So they do find themselves 15th. They don't move up. They don't move down. Same spot as last week. Number 14, also in the same spot as last week, is the LA Kings. Los Angeles, same kind of thing as I was talking about before, where I watch the game and I go, yeah, I think they're about in the right spot. I don't necessarily move every team up when they win a game. I don't necessarily move every team down when they lose a game. Because on a night with 12, 13, or 14 games, this is just chaos. It's absolute complete chaos. So move them around a little bit, and you've got to have some confidence in where teams are in the rankings, which is difficult when everybody's so close in points. Number 13, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Seattle. The Kraken find themselves down 1 spot. They are currently 3rd place in the Pacific Division. And so they're getting enough points, they're getting enough wins, they're staying above the playoff line, and they're staying in the top half of my power rankings. I haven't seen anything negative about the Kraken lately. I mean, there might be some who think they're kind of boring to watch because they don't really have that superstar presence on their team, but they're getting enough points to be above the playoff line right now. Number 12, dropping 6 spots from last week, Montreal. They kind of got things together a bit tonight. If they had lost against Toronto, Montreal would have found themselves lower on this board. Probably, I'm going to go ahead and say 14th if they had lost tonight. Getting that win over Toronto, good. It stops the bleeding a little bit, and we'll see if they've gained confidence off of that, and it starts to get things going for them again. Being a young team, it's going to happen. Young teams go through that, where their confidence gets a bit shaky and everything kind of falls apart. But then once they get that confidence back, we should see them go on a bit more of a run. It just means that if you're a Montreal fan, have your antacids on hand. Make sure that you're good to go and make sure that you understand it's a young team. They're going to drive you crazy sometimes. Number 11, moving up 2 spots from last week, the Islanders. Islanders had a great road trip. They did lose the game today against St. Louis. I didn't penalize them for that. I didn't penalize them for that because I was like, you know what? It was a long road trip. So it is not strange to see a team come back off a long road trip and lose that first game at home. That happens a lot. So I'm not feeling at all concerned that St. Louis game means that the Islanders are going to, start losing now. But it is something to keep an eye on. We'll see how things go. But the Islanders, 11th this week. Wouldn't have thought the Islanders would have been 11th on a power ranking 7 weeks into the season. Number 10, dropping 2 spots from last week, Winnipeg. The Jets, it's been interesting watching them because I still think they're playing well, but the results not necessarily showing that. And right now they find themselves outside of a playoff spot. Keep in mind, they have 2 games in hand on both of the wild card teams and on both of the both the second and third place teams in the Central Division, and they're only 2 points out of third in the Central Division where Minnesota currently resides. So it's not all dire at this point in time, although they're below the playoff line, but it's definitely something they got to straighten out before they're no longer 1 point back, then they're 3, then they're 5, and then they're 7. That kind of thing. You got to watch for that. Speaking of teams that just dropped below the playoff line, dropping 2 spots from last week, Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh, in coming back from Sweden, the game against Minnesota, I did not punish them for that. They did drop a little bit today for the loss they took against Seattle. Pittsburgh just has to figure this out and get everything together. I've talked about it a lot over the last week, but it is true that teams that do play the Global Series do have struggles every now and then when they come back from those Global Series games. And so it's up to Pittsburgh to rediscover what they were doing in the first couple of weeks of the season and get that to work in their favor once again. I think they're missing Jari and net a little bit too. So not that Murashov's been bad or Shilov's is bad, just I think there's a little more confidence when Jari is the goaltender for Pittsburgh. That's not our vehicle, is it? I don't think that's our vehicle. Nope, the alarm went off right away. It's not our vehicle. Yvonne at this point in time is in bed. So, yeah, there's no way it's our vehicle. Moving into the top row. Shall we move into the top row? You won't hear a car alarm in Sportsnet. Number 8, moving up. They don't have a puck board either, so take that, Sportsnet. Number 8, moving into the top row, it's Vegas. Yep, Vegas moves up 2 spots from last week. Pretty good week. Yeah, they lost against Anaheim in overtime tonight, but Vegas in general has started to play like Vegas. And I know they have 7 overtime loss points, which is the most of anybody in the NHL, but they've also only lost 4 in regulation, so that's how that works. But yeah, so Vegas starts the top row. Number 7, dropping 2 spots from last week, Boston. So the Bruins drop a couple of spots. They're 13-10, but I think they're still 7-3 in their last 10. We'll see how they do in their next game. But yeah, Boston has been, on the road, I don't think they're as good as they are at home. They're not the only team in the NHL that's like that, and the trip through California isn't as easy as it used to be. So Boston drops a couple of spots, but they're still in the top row, and they're the number 1 wild card currently in the East. Number 6, dropping 4 spots from last week, New Jersey. The Devils are not the same without Jack Hughes. I apologize for repeating myself because we talked about this last season into the playoffs. We're talking about it again here. They're different. It's not the same. There are teams in the NHL that when one player is out, if it's that exact right player, that linchpin, it makes a huge difference to the results. And in New Jersey's case, that is Jack Hughes. So we'll see if New Jersey has a better week upcoming, but that 6-3 loss against Philadelphia tonight, that one stings, and every time it looked like they were getting back in the game, they weren't. So, yeah, that's where we're at currently with the New Jersey Devils. Number 5, moving up 6 spots from last week, Tampa. Tampa's playing well. I know they did have, I think they had, the 1 loss this week, which wasn't great, but yeah, Tampa's playing well. They went into Washington. They got the 5-3 win tonight. So I do like the Lightning's game right now. I think, Johansson having a really strong game tonight, that's good. So the goaltending's definitely been showing up for them lately. The Lightning are still dangerous. They're still a dangerous team. Number 4, moving up 5 spots from last week, Anaheim. The Ducks are back in the top row, and the confidence seems to be back in their game. Tonight against Vegas, they go down 3-2, and it felt like we're at it again. Here they go. It's, the Ducks. And they didn't fall apart. They got it together. Either something was said between the first and second period, or the team just collectively realized, hey, we're better than this. And they played a heck of a lot better for the next 40 minutes and into the extra time. So Anaheim's been fun to watch. And they're playing like a team that doesn't have a ton of pressure, which I think makes a team play better. Number 3, same spot as last week, Dallas. So I mentioned in the review, I'll say it again here, I do expect Rantanen to get a suspension for that hit on Coronado tonight. I'd be kind of surprised if he doesn't. I think it would be a bad message from the Department of Player Safety, especially so soon after that hit on Romanov, which they didn't punish at all. They thought, it's not that bad. But this one, I think they kind of have to, right? You gave them the benefit of the doubt, and then the Coronado hit happens. So we'll see how that affects Dallas this upcoming week if they don't have Rantanen for, say, 3 or 4 games, however long that may end up being. But, Dallas, they're getting decent results. They're definitely getting decent results. They're definitely a tough team, but I would really be happy if Rantanen would stop with the late dirty hits. Number 2, and moving up 2 spots from last week, Carolina, the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes just plug along. They play well every game. It's rare that I watch a Canes game and think, well, they've fallen off. They're not playing very well. So Carolina moves back up to the number 2 spot. So they were 4th on the power rankings last week and the week before. As I've said before in the power rankings, I don't foresee a time where Carolina is going to be out of the top row this season. I'd be surprised if that happened. And they're still number 2 this week. Which brings us to number 1. It will not surprise anybody that Colorado's still number 1 on the board. It does not give me any pain to put Colorado first. I don't have any personal preference of teams in terms of where they are on the power rankings board. And Colorado being first for a second week in a row is the least surprising thing. In fact, tonight I was thinking, I should just put Colorado on the board first and just go, here's first place. Now we'll go back down to 32nd and start and just do second as the last puck. And I thought, I've got this standard. I'm not going to change it now. If I was just using magnets like I did before I had the puck board, maybe. But that was when I used to do the switch around at the end too, which some people found funny and some people didn't. But I used to do that to point out people that would just skip to the end. They get all mad. They're like, why is San Jose number 1? They're not, but you skipped to the end. You didn't watch the rest. But at any rate, there you go. There's your power rankings for week 7. November 22nd, although at the time these posts to the channel will be November 23rd. We're almost up to December. And if you haven't started your Christmas shopping, get it started. And if you want to, go to THGYT.ca. Go ahead and click on the shop around. We have gift cards on there now too. So my wife's been doing a lot of work on that over the last week, and greatly appreciated that she helps out with the channel and everything. You may not see her in videos, but she does a lot behind the scenes, and I'm very, very glad she's here. That's the only Christmas present I need. So thank you guys so much for all your support as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. And to people who get mad at this board for these rankings, I apologize. These things happen. But hey, I will talk to you again soon.